In yesterday's video, we talked about the top 5 beginner bosses for people wanting to get into PvM. The bosses that will teach you a lot of stuff, make you a decent amount of money, and are worth your time going to. We talked about them in an order from probably the first place you want to start, and then moving your way up and what you're going to learn from each individual boss. Today, I'm going to be talking about the top 5 most difficult bosses for the people who have already put time into PvM and maybe just want to challenge themselves. A lot of you guys that are at endgame PvM are probably going to be fully aware of the bosses that are going to be mentioned in this list. However, I wanted to make this video for the people who do end up getting into PvM, building their way up, and then want to challenge themselves once they reach the end game and know where the biggest and hardest challenges can be found. Keep in mind that this list is going to be my own opinion, and if you disagree, that's probably because everyone is different and people are going to struggle with different things and find other things easier than others. So of course, do keep that in mind. And if you do disagree, let me know what bosses you would put as the top 5 difficult ones in the comments below. With that being said, let's get into the top 5 most difficult bosses in my opinion. Now the question is, do we go from hardest down to the least hardest, or do we go from the lower hardest? This is really weird to say. Or do we go from the lesser difficulty boss and move up to the big bad number 1? I think we're going to start from probably the lower down ones, the ones that aren't as difficult but are definitely up there. Also, keep in mind that I am not going to be mentioning things like soloing raids or soloing AOD, as I personally see these as personal challenges. The people who do these, yes, they're incredibly good PvMers, and it's probably one of the more challenging things to do in the game and would push it up quite high in the list. But while those achievements are absolutely incredible, for most people I would say it's not something that they're looking at doing anytime soon, at least. So with that being said, let's start off with number 5 on this list, which was very, very difficult for me to place because I wasn't sure whether to place this one or number 4. They were very close. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you think about this one. So number 5 is going to be solo Karapak hard mode. This is a encounter that is pretty damn difficult to get used to. As I would say, the main difficult part for most players is going to be phase 4. Phase 4 at Karapak hard mode is going to actually make you focus on using your defensives a hell of a lot more than maybe you're comfortable doing. It will challenge you to make sure you have an understanding of what all the defense abilities do and how to use them, and how to use them in an order that makes sure that when one of them comes off cooldown, you do have access to the other one should you need it. There's definitely some tactics you can use to make this a lot easier, such as using a vitality potion on one of the clones, for example, or using Crit Bloom armor to reduce the amount of damage you take, seeing as he will only hit with magic. That being said, even using Crit Bloom armor and animate dead, you still need to be able to know what you're doing in this fight, otherwise you will be punished quickly and you will be taking a quick trip to the Death's office. Don't worry though, because you'll see me there and I'll be there paying the rent. Don't you worry about it. Death has a wall that needs painting and he needs my money to pay for that paint, so I'm always freaking there. And honestly, with 600 hard mode kills under my belt, I still struggle sometimes in the last phase to actually stay alive should I do one thing wrong. This is how punishing this boss can be. If you screw up a little bit of rotation on the last phase, it becomes very difficult very quickly. You can notice how fast your health drops if you use the wrong ability at the wrong time, or if you get to a position where you don't have any defensives available and you've just finished killing the last clone and you need to travel over to Karapak, he will stack his attacks on you and they do a hell of a lot of damage should you not have devotion or reflect or something like that to help you survive through them. One small mistake in this fight can absolutely be the death of you, and that is definitely why he has made this list, not to mention the other mechanics during phase 1 till 3. One of the next big things that will take you to Death's office from this boss is going to be his lightning walls. Lightning walls are probably the most difficult part of this fight when you're not inside phase 4, because what they're going to do is each phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 will have a lightning wall depending on what phase you're in. So phase 1 will have 1 wall, phase 2 will have 2, and phase 3 will have 3. If you get hit by these walls of lightning, which the hitboxes are a little bit off, you kind of have to imagine there's something in front of them because they're just not thick enough. They should be bigger, they're just not. But the way I get around this is imagine that the lightning is about double the size, but the one you can see is the very back. Because if you go to the very back of this lightning, you won't take any damage. But should you go in front of it where you're not even touching it yet, you will still take the damage. So you just have to keep in mind that the hitbox of this is very different from what you can see. Now, I can't even mention the amount of times myself and others that I've seen get to phase 3, not realize that they're so close to phasing, and then phase just as the lightning starts. You get 3 lightning waves coming towards you, he's phasing to phase 4, and you just panic because what the hell? You don't want to use barricade because you lose all your adrenaline. You don't want to, you just don't know what to do. You are like, okay, we'll try and dodge all these lightnings, and then one thing goes wrong and it's the end of that. Not to mention the fact that when you phase into phase 4 with the lightning, half of the lightning you get, you can normally not even see it, along with some of the clones that you're meant to see. So that absolutely does not help all that much. But that being said, phase 4 is usually the killer here. Someone will either run out of food, or you'll make a couple of mistakes. You'll use a defensive at the same time as another one and stack them up, and then you'll not have anything else when you need it for the next bit. Or you just won't have enough damage and you'll end up in this fight for too long. And of course, because Carapac hits so damn hard in phase 4, if you're in here for too long, you're going to be eating up all your food and you will run out very quickly. So with all those things taken into account, that's why I placed Carapac hard mode as a solo player at number 5. Moving on to number 4. Number 4 on this list is going to be Solak. Solak is actually a pretty damn difficult boss in my opinion, and I had a little bit of a struggle learning this boss properly. I initially got through and did my first kill without making any mistakes and dying. However, when I returned back the next few times, holy crap, for some reason I had gone backwards and I struggled on getting through these kills without making any mistakes, without signing, without dying, as there is a hell of a lot going on and there's a lot of stuff you need to take into account. Usually when I do Solak, it will be in a duo or a trio, and I usually don't really do anything more than that. I think I've done a 4-man once, but nothing really more than that. Let's kind of focus this on a duo or a trio sort of scenario. Solak is usually a pretty long fight in comparison to most other bosses, considering it's not something like a dungeon run or anything like that. It's just go in, kill the boss, get out, go in, kill the boss, get out. These fights usually take around about 3 or 4 minutes, but a Solak encounter can take you from 7 to 10 minutes depending on your experience. Obviously it can go faster than that depending on your experience as well, but at the moment my personal record here is 7 minutes 21, and this is in a duo. So the average kill time is probably looking around about 7:30 to 8 minutes. Now this is important to mention because this fight has so many mechanics, it has so much stuff you need to be paying attention to, and it is incredibly punishing. If you make mistakes, holy crap, will he beat the living crap out of you and murder you off pretty damn fast. If you get killed at any point during this fight, there is probably very little chance that your duo partner or trio partners will be able to finish this kill without you there. Obviously it can be done, and people are soloing Solak at the moment, which actually starts as a duo encounter. That being said, for most people doing this boss, you will not likely continue on trying to solo the rest of the boss. So considering it is about an average of an 8-minute kill time, you are going to be looking at not making any mistakes that get you killed throughout the entire 8 minutes. Considering there is so many things to learn and there is so many different punishing mechanics, if you mess up very little amount of things, you can absolutely ruin the kill and have to reset. Solak has some mechanics that can absolutely get you murdered off pretty damn quick. For example, at the beginning there is a pad you have to go to, and if you don't get to that pad, both players are going to take a really high amount of damage. You can deal with this by using things like debilitate or reflect, but should you not do it in time, you can pretty much be dead from the get-go. This is then followed up by DPS checks, and then it is followed up by mechanics that will punish you throughout the entire fight should you not deal with them correctly. If you do manage to get to the final phase, you then have to do enough DPS in a short amount of time to avoid an insta-kill mechanic. One person will want to go into the realm likely, unless you have ridiculous DPS anyway, take aggro from all the spirits inside the realm, not to mention while you are in there you cannot heal at all. So should you not deal enough damage, or your duo partner or trio partner not deal enough damage, you will be in there, not be able to heal, and you will end up dying. This is right at the end of the kill as well, so should you not get this, you have to then start the fight again and bring on another 8 to 10 minute kill. That being said, Solak is probably one of the most fun bosses that I have had the experience of doing, and I would honestly recommend it to anyone wanting to get into high-end PvM, because yes, it is a great challenge, and once you do get it down, it becomes a ridiculously good amount of fun. Even before getting through, to be honest, when I used to kill this boss while learning to tank, there was quite a lot of kills where I just wouldn't get through and we would end up dying. But that being said, it was still fun to just go back in and keep trying, because this boss is just super fun and super rewarding. So with the high auto attack hits and the punishing mechanics all included in a long drawn out fight, I am going to be placing this boss at position 4 on this list. Number 3 on this list, we are moving into the big badass bosses now. This is going to be the ones that are getting very difficult, and the ones that personally I can't even do myself. But let's be honest, we kind of expected that. I am not the best PvMer in the world. Number 3 is going to be Zuk hard mode. Now I'm sure a few of you guys are going to go, wait, what? Zuk hard mode is number 3? What's above that? Like, obviously you're probably expecting what number 1 is going to be already, but Zuk hard mode number 3? What's number 2? We'll just have to wait and see. Zuk hard mode is something that I have not done yet. It is a boss that I have tried to do a couple of times. I want to say literally 2 attempts when the boss first released. So I've not gone in and done the whole kill yet. But I know that this boss is incredibly difficult. I mean, it should be. It's called hard mode, of course, and it is an endgame boss. Hard mode Zuk is definitely something that a lot of players will struggle with, as it does include a lot of different sort of playstyle than other bosses in the game. For example, Zuk has 17 waves. the 18th being the actual fight with Zuck himself. So across those 17 waves, you're going to get enemies thrown at you, and then you're going to get special waves as well where you have to do specific different things. This is an endurance test, meaning you have to know how to use your defensive abilities, where to stand, and also how to manage your food use a lot better than in normal bosses. You can't just eat through all the mechanics, because chances are you will run out before you get to the end if that's how you deal with it. So you're kind of forced to have to deal with mechanics and in a good way of dealing with them, rather than in other bosses where you can kind of just, I took 3k damage from mechanic, I'll just eat a rock tail, everything will be fine. Because this boss fight is so drawn out, you do have to pay attention to what's going on and make sure you're not wasting the food, not wasting the supplies, because running out towards the end would just not be a good thing. Throughout the fight, there is different challenges that you have to get through as well. For example, on wave 5, you will have to do a DPS check challenge, which is where you have to kill all of the golems around yourself before the timer runs out. If you don't do that, you will take a good amount of damage, and also you will have failed the challenge. If you are doing Zuck to try and get the hybrid best in slot cape, then you have to do a flawless hard mode run. Failing these challenges will not count as a flawless kill. You will then receive 2 more challenges at wave 10 and wave 15, and just like with the first one, if you do fail these, it will not be counted as a flawless run. Unlike the normal mode version of this fight, throughout the waves you're going to have different mechanics thrown at you as well, such as a line of fire or lava that will come down and will deal damage to you and separate you from where you are. You can't just safe spot, you can't stand in the same place, otherwise you will get hit by this fire. Once you reach wave 17, which is the Hierarchan boss, his difficulty is very much increased than it is in normal mode. In normal mode, this boss can only use his ability where he throws big area of effect damage bombs at you when he is not attackable. However, in hard mode, he will be able to do this even when he is attackable, meaning you have to be paying attention for any of these mechanics coming your way, otherwise you will be in for a very difficult time. He does have higher health as well, and there is a few other mechanics such as spawning tentacles in the middle of the room rather than just around in the lava. Once you get through this, you will be ready to fight Zuck himself. The Zuck fight is very similar to normal mode, except for rather than using a special attack every 3 abilities, he will use one every 2 abilities, which of course means that you are constantly going to be on your toes ready to deal with these mechanics, probably slowing down your DPS and probably just being a lot more hectic than normal. You have to know how to deal with the mechanics quickly, and you have to be able to be ready for the next one as soon as it's about to come. This fight in hard mode will also take a lot longer to complete than it does in the normal mode. That being said, when you get through the majority of the fight at 100k damage, you do have an extra mechanic that you'd never seen before. There'll be a spike in the middle of the room that you do need to kill. When that gets down to 0 HP, Zuck is going to charge up an attack that will probably kill you off. Of course, there is going to be ways to deal with this. Of course, there has to be, which is going to be using your defensives at the right time to make sure you don't die. This adds a bit of extra things that you need to pay attention to, such as your adrenaline use, as you are going to need to use your adrenaline on some of the occasions to block this damage. For example, every time you get this spike down to 0 health, there will be an explosion, and this only takes 20k damage off of Zuck, so you will have to do this 4 more times. The 5th one being when Zuck dies. Throughout these 4 hits, you're going to want to use things like resonance to block the damage, but then sometimes you're going to have to use barricade or immortality, which of course costs 100% adrenaline. So this boss is definitely something that is quite difficult to learn, and I will need to be learning this myself at some point very soon, and I think maybe in the near future I will give this a good shot. Do you guys think this deserves rank 3 on this list? Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure plenty of you guys will think this is nice and easy, but personally I think this is one of the hardest bosses that we could do at the moment. Next on this list is a boss that I reckon a lot of you guys probably expected to be at number 1, and that is going to be Telos. Telos at high end rage, of course. Telos is a boss that has a lot of mechanics and is incredibly punishing like many of the other bosses in this list, but kind of more so. Telos has an enrage system which takes him from 0% enrage being quite not that difficult all the way up to 4000% enrage, which is incredibly difficult and not achieved by a whole ton of players in the game. Don't get me wrong, there's quite a decent amount of players now that have managed to do this, as of course after all the time that Telos has been around, having all of the tactics and all of the ways to get around this and actually deal with it come out and be in videos and people talking about it, it's definitely been something that players have picked up on and been able to complete. However, that doesn't make this boss an easy boss to deal with. Once you start climbing the enrage at Telos, the difficulty starts increasing a hell of a lot, and you notice it. You actually notice the big difference, and you need to start dealing with the boss in different ways. For the average player, this is going to be a huge learning curve, and I'm sure it can probably be a hell of a lot of a stressful situation along the way. Once you reach 1000 enrage, the mechanics of the boss change slightly as well, meaning that most of the stuff you've learned pre 1000% enrage does have to be changed and altered to get through these higher enrages. As you move up the enrage percent at Telos, he will hit you harder, he will have more health, and other mechanics will be added on. Once you get past a certain percent of enrage, the mechanics do stay the same, but his damage that he deals to you will continue to increase. For the players who have beat 4k Telos, it is usually something like a specific rotation, a specific like timing on your abilities, and as long as you do them in the right order at the right time at specific sort of points, then you'll be absolutely fine. You know how to deal with it, and it's something that you can just repeat over and over again. But learning that curve and not making mistakes and getting to that point is incredibly difficult, and it is a great achievement to be able to reach that high of an enrage. Telos being a very different boss from all of the others in the game as well kind of makes learning this boss very difficult for a lot of players. There's so many different things to pick up on, and there's a hell of a lot to be thinking about throughout the entire fight, as there is 5 phases. Each phase has to be dealt with in its own way, meaning you have a lot to remember, and then of course the last phase where you have to do enough DPS to the boss, take minions to a font and charge that up to stop the insta-kill attack, is probably one of the more difficult challenges of the fight. You'll notice most players doing the high end rage will absolutely completely not bother taking any of the minions to the font. They will just deal with them, freeze them, and then go do as much DPS as they can, as this is the better way to deal with this. If you can kill Telos off before even getting to the insta-kill mechanic, then you're absolutely in a better position. That being said, you have to be able to deal a lot of damage in this time. That includes also dealing with rocks falling from the sky, which if you take one of those, you are probably going to die. Dealing with golems, which you are going to have to prayer flick should they reach you. Dealing with the massive hits that Telos is going to be dealing to you himself. Beam switches, which give you different buffs and different debuffs. And making sure your rotation that you do here is going to be spot on. There is a hell of a lot to learn for this fight, and there is a hell of a lot to put into practice and make sure you master it to be able to get to 4K enrage. So with this enrage mechanic, Telos is still one of the hardest bosses in the game in my opinion, and I don't think too many people would disagree. What do you guys think? Is Telos deserved a number 2 spot? Or maybe you need to listen to what number 1 is going to be first? I guess we'll just have to see. So we've talked about Zook and we've talked about Telos, 2 of the hardest bosses that there is. Honestly, in my opinion, I don't think there's too many bosses that are more difficult than this, obviously, because there's only one that I'm putting above this, and that is going to be the Arc Glacial and Max Enrage. Not just standard Arc Glacial on a lower enrage, because this boss does have an enrage mechanic just like Telos as well. Now the Arc Glacial was actually mentioned in my last video as a good beginner boss. That is in normal mode or very low enrages like 0%, and you can toggle the abilities on and off, and you can make it nice and easy for yourself. That being said, in hard mode, you can do the same that you can do at Telos and push your enrage up really high. This enrage system also caps at 4K enrage as well, meaning that this boss gets incredibly difficult. This boss, as you get higher up, will hit you stupidly hard. The mods who released this said that this boss was not designed to be able to be beat at 4K enrage. However, of course, we do have some people in the community who are ridiculously good at PvM who have achieved this. They said it wouldn't happen, and they did it. In all honesty, most of the people who have any idea who this is, of course being Evil Lucario, kind of didn't doubt that it would happen eventually, that he would just push through, but he did this ridiculously fast. However, because of this, we did manage to see that this is not an easy thing to do. Holy crap, if you make a mistake, you are done with. The boss hits so freaking hard at high enrage that if you literally miss one ability at the right time, such as a resonance, that is it. You are done. You need to reset the fight. Not to mention the fact that the higher the enrage goes, not only does he increase the damage, but his HP also scales as well, meaning you are in that fight for a hell of a lot longer than when you are on lower enrages. So the longer you're in the fight, the longer you have to deal with the fact of making one mistake can cause you the end of this kill. For what I have seen on the highest enrage possibilities at Arc Glacial is you have to constantly be rotating your defense abilities while meeting ridiculously high DPS checks, and of course maybe even most importantly being ridiculously consistent. I know I've said it before, but making one mistake is the end of this kill. Going through a full fight which is over 10 minutes long and not making a single mistake can literally be probably one of the most stressful things you could do in RuneScape. For me personally, imagining that is something that I just no. I'm not that consistent in PvM. I could not do this. It's something that I will probably just accept that I will never do. That being said, this has been done by a few players, I believe. I'm not too sure of the exact numbers, but I know it is not a high amount of numbers of players that have managed to do this. I'm sure there's people who are working towards it still and will probably get there, especially following on from what other people have set the example of how to do it. But personally, I don't think this will be a boss that I try and aim to even get anywhere near that enrage at, because I just don't see myself ever being good enough to get that far along. And I'm not just saying that like, I'm not good enough. Well, no, that is absolutely not the mindset on this. I just genuinely think that this is something that is just not something I could actually work towards. That being said, with the mechanics that scale up ridiculously punishing in this, like when I say punishing, I don't just mean like, it's alright, it just takes a little bit more food than normal. They will kill you. If you mess up literally like at all, you'll be killed. The mechanic scale, the HP scales, the amount of time you're in the fight scales, the in-depthness of having to know exactly what to do at exactly what time, and the reaction times that you probably get as well. All this added together, I would say the Arc Glacial at max enrage, or even just close to max enrage, it's probably going to be the hardest boss in the game. And that's why this boss earns its list above Telos. And I think actually it's not very often that you make a list talking about things to do with high-end PvM where Telos doesn't sort of take #1 slot. So this is quite interesting to me, and I'm very interested in finding out if you guys agree. Anyway, this video has been long, so I'm not going to spend ages on the outro. Thank you so much to the channel members who do support the channel that bit extra each and every month. Guys, let me know in the comments down below what you think about this list. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know what you disagree with, which you will place bosses at, and if there's anything that I missed. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.